how I ended up sort of on TikTok. I got my ass kicked by my girlfriend. She's like, you need to be on TikTok. You need to be on TikTok. And within about, I think, 5 weeks, I had about 200,000 followers and 1 million likes and so forth. Trying to say something substantive on a complex topic in 59 seconds is no small feat. Pleasure to be here. Thanks so much for having me on, Katrina. I really appreciate it. As you may or may not know, I have a counseling practice in Manhattan, in Midtown, and also in Fairfield County in Connecticut. 70% of my clientele is people generally in the C-suite or business owners, presidents of companies, and so forth. I've been doing this for about 30 years and helping people who have either lost their mojo to find it or who have reached the very pinnacle of success and realized that all these things that we're supposed to fill that hole inside haven't. And it's helping people fundamentally to refine themselves and to sort of get back on fire again. How I ended up sort of on TikTok, I got my ass kicked by my girlfriend. She's like, you need to be on TikTok. You need to be on TikTok. And I'm like, honey, as if I don't have enough other things to worry about, right?
Totally.
She threw one out there back in January and then just let it go till February till I had some more time. Then I did a few more and then it just exploded. And within about, I think, 5 weeks, I had about 200,000 followers and 1 million likes and so forth. And it's just, trying to say something substantive on a complex topic in 59 seconds is no small feat. Badass, really, the people who are truly badass are the people who can finally hear their own voice. And I think of great artists, great musicians, visionary talents in business, real visionaries. And my goal is to get people to hear and heed their own internal voice, because that's where the genius is. That's where their unique talent, their unique abilities, their unique vision, that's where it is. It's inside of them. And if they're not connected with that, they're gonna stall, they're gonna plateau, they're gonna whatever. And usually it's because there's crud that's been packed down, fears, BS beliefs about themselves and so forth. And so you get that out and you get them reconnected with their own voice. That's where the greatness really comes out.
When you meet someone, let's say for the first time, and you feel like this passion or chemistry or whatever it is, that's really a trauma response in your body, being like, you guys have been through the same things. So even if someone has some type of feedback to share with you or insight and you're compelled by it, I really like what you said, that we still need to check in with ourselves. And even though there could be truth in that and in that dialogue and in their perspective, what does it mean for us and where do I really want to take it for myself? So when you're recognizing this in people, first, could you tell me, like, what does that look like in another human? And then how are you revitalizing them in the sense, like, how do they then tap into themselves?
Yeah, you see it when someone is either, the most common ways it expresses itself is some sort of sadness, depression, or anxiety. And depression, less in the sense of sadness per se, but more in the sense of down energy. I'm a big believer in energy, and not in some new agey way per se, but if you're talking to someone at work and let's say it's your boss and he or she gives you a sincere appreciation of what you just did, of the project you just accomplished. There's an energy, there's a transfer of energy. We call it I feel good. We call it I feel enthused, I feel inspired, but you feel something. There's an energy there. There really is. Or, when you go to that end of the year review, you did 5 things great and 2 things, we need to improve. The rest of the vacation, you're thinking about those 2 things.
Absolutely.
And so when I've got a client in front of me, what I'm feeling around for is, what do I feel coming off of them? I can feel when someone has some sort of energy that's off. And very often it's the simple question, what's wrong? So I'm feeling the energy. I'm feeling a person's energy and just asking normal questions. And ultimately, my curiosity needs to be satisfied. I'm looking for incongruencies. Well, Sven, I really want to be doing this. This is my vision. This is my direction. But you're not doing that. I'm thinking in my head. So what does that tell me? If someone's not going in the direction that they have, either some fear is holding them back, or that's not the real direction that they want for their lives. And so then I start digging. So I'm feeling the energy, but I'm just also looking for things in there, what's coming out of their mouths that doesn't make sense, that doesn't add up. And then I begin to sort of pair those things together, and I'm looking for the ins, and I'm going deeper, and it always reveals itself. And I'm at the point now where it's not, last 15, 20, 30 years, 25 years, it's just, I'm not even really thinking. It's all on instinct. And I'm just looking for the things that just don't add up or don't make sense. And then it's looking for the whys. Well, why is this? Why are you doing this? Why are you not doing this? And ultimately, almost invariably, it boils down to fear. It's always some fears driving the equation. And then further down you can get and determine what those fears are or what the beliefs are. See, I come out of the realm of theology. I come out of the realm of religion, which is all about beliefs. And it applies, there's an overlay onto business or the arts or anything. It has nothing to do with beliefs in God or religion. Nothing wrong with that, but that's not what I deal in. It's beliefs people have been taught about themselves and they can't see them. 99.99 times out of 100, they can't see them. And my job is to help them see, to go down deep enough. And there's an old saying, transformation can be immediate if you go deep enough. And the problem with most clergy or therapists or what have you is they don't go deep enough. They're looking at behaviors, and I'm not interested in behaviors really at all. And behaviors are just symptomatic of what's really going on inside them. So if I go down deep enough, I can unearth that, help them see that, and they sort of have the aha or the holy shit moment. And then everything begins to change.
I agree that our hearts and our minds need to be aligned. So if you can get deep enough where it makes sense in your brain, then your behaviors and your actions will change as a result. And I think it's so funny that you don't focus on behavior, because I even worked at a behavioral correctional facility and things like that. And like for adult males and for young youth women. And it's just kind of like, that's the surface level, right? Like exactly what you're saying. That's the result of a much deeper issue. And if we don't actually address that and figure out the human behind their behavior, then we're missing out on so much. And with Mental Health Awareness Month coming up, it's a really great opportunity for us to just look at one another as human beings and figure out those whys within us and kind of what brought us to the points in our lives that we're all at and intersecting with one another at that given time.
And that's so true. And I love what you said. And I have tremendous respect for people in mental health professions. One of my brothers has been for 30 years, oncology, hospice, social worker, dealing with the dying every day. I have profound respect for his work. And psychologists and psychiatrists, immense respect. For me personally, I'm not a drug counselor. I'm not a food eating disorders counselor or anything medical. I'm strictly dealing on the spiritual side. And what that means is I'm dealing in people's core beliefs. And I absolutely believe, as I wrote in my last book, that you can try to change behaviors, but they won't change long-term until you change the core beliefs driving the behavior. And I've had a lot of clients, for instance, a lot of execs or people who bring their family members to me. So I've had a lot of high school, college age kids just out of college, females included, many of them with eating disorders. And what I tell them is, listen, I'm not an eating disorder specialist. You need to go see an eating disorder. And they're like, no, we want to work with you. I'm like, okay, but I'm not an eating disorder specialist. And so my job, from my perspective, is not to get you to stop binging and purging. That's the after effect. You're binging and purging very often is because for those 3 hours of binging and those 3 hours of purging, your mind is shut off. It's the 6 hours of release, so the 4 hours of freedom you get from all those fucking voices in your head, from all those pressures, from all those anxieties. So in an odd way, the bulimia or the bottle for the 22-year-old male, or the Percocet, or the overworking for the 44-year-old female, exec. I'm just gonna work, and that way I just keep running and stay away from that tidal wave of all my feelings and all this stuff going on inside of me. Right? I can just stay one step ahead. Whatever it might be, in a way, that overworking or that bulimia or the bottle or the Percocet, strange as it may sound, has been your friend. Because it's been the one thing in your life that has given you liberty from all the shit that has been going on, not just in your head, but down deep in your soul for your entire fucking life, when you got programmed to believe that you're less than, that you're not enough, that who you really are doesn't matter. And so my job is to go down deep and find what those things are. And eventually that friend, so to speak, just sort of goes away. In other words, when we create a life that you no longer have a desire to escape, the Percocet, the boozing, the weed, incessant weed, that's a big one nowadays. I mean, it always was, but Jesus, it's so big nowadays, as an escape. Well, I'm trying to escape because I don't like this life. So we have to go into what's really driving your behaviors in your life, recreate that so that you have a life you no longer have a desire to escape. It's complex stuff, but here's the thing. It can actually go kind of quickly. It's just the deeper you go, and I'm very aggressive in my style. I require all my clients to write an autobiography before they ever even meet with me. And I read that on my own time. That's something I give to my clients, which I somehow use to justify my rates that I charge. But then in the first session, we hit the ground running.
Yeah.
And I'm going deep, deep, deep. My sessions are never 1 hour. I don't believe in 1 hour sessions. And first session is between 3 and 6 hours. The client can choose. But we're not here for you. We're here for me. You are here to let me do what I do. And your job is to just get on. Your job is to just keep opening and let me do what I do. And I can't do what I do in 1 hour. I don't believe anybody can really accomplish much in 1 hour, but that's just me. I'm a dick. But so we go deep, 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 and you can start seeing results very, very quickly. Everything's not going to change overnight. I'm in no way saying that, but people can begin to see momentum soon, and life changes. And very often, people that come to me are on the cusp, and they've been struggling with it and wrestling with it, and they finally come. And I get people who would never be caught dead in therapy, who've said that's for weaklings, screw it, that's stupid. But they finally come because they can't do it on their own. And this is one of the critical pieces. And I want to make this point. So many of the clients that I have reached incredible levels of success, people you've heard of in multiple fields of life. And they've reached that level. And very often that has been reached on willpower. But as I tell my clients, the soul is more powerful than the will. And eventually what happens, no matter how much success you have, either you realize how fucking empty you are inside, or you just get tired because you've been forcing life for so long. And that is an absolute indicator that someone is disconnected from who they are. Because when you're connected with who you truly are, this may sound ridiculous, but clients who have worked with me know that it's true. There is this wellspring, this effortlessness to life. It's still hard work, but it's hard work at what you love. And it's like when you started that company, it's that exhilaration, but people lose that because they're forcing life on their willpower. And if there's one thing I've seen, it's that the biggest mistake people make, often the most driven people make the same mistake over and over again. They force it. They force it. They don't know how to let go. They don't know how to give room, as crazy as it sounds, room for the gods to work, room for the universe to work. It's like, no, I gotta force it. I gotta control it. I gotta control it. These are masters of control. I can't let any detail slip. But when they start to open that hand just a little bit, they start to see results. They start to see new insights. They start to see things happening that they couldn't have made happen with their willpower. And they began to realize how powerful the soul and just forces that I can't control are. And they begin to trust that more and more, and they begin to trust their intuition more and more and more. And that's when the really cool changes start to happen. The most brilliant ideas start to happen.
We've grown up believing these things about ourselves, and that's really what you're trying to uncover with each of your clients. But in my life, I have a lot of friends that are growth mindset individuals, and then I have ones that are more of a fixed mindset, and they're comfortable, right? And we exist in our own spaces in that way. But what happens when you run into someone who finds all of this work and this self-development, self-improvement to be too exhausting, and they want to just continue on this, comfort path, even if they're not happy? What does that conversation look like?
And so what does it look like? I'll tell you. I had a client at my Connecticut office, and very successful man, and let's say 60, 70 pounds overweight. And he admitted, he says, my weight is an indicator of the stuff going on inside of me. And I've gone and I've tried this and I've tried that, not necessarily to lose the weight, but to, fix myself. And at the end of about 3 sessions, let's say, he says, Sven, I gotta say, I've seen you now for 11 hours, because remember, I have multiple hour sessions. I've seen you now for 11 hours, and I gotta be honest with you, Sven, you haven't fixed me. And I listened to that, and I said, you know what? I'll just call him Steve. I'll say, you know what, Steve, you're actually right. I haven't fixed you. I said, and I'm going to volley this back to you. I've been working with you for 11 hours, and for 11 hours, you still haven't opened up. I said, I asked all my questions, but as any therapist, any psychologist, any clergy person knows, you can't help someone if they stay closed. I'm a gentleman, and I say, listen, I wish you only the very best, and I don't work for everyone. And in some cases, I'll even offer someone, I'll tell them in advance, if someone's really skeptical of me, but they want to work with me, I'll say, oh, listen, let's write up a contract. I will literally refund all your money if I don't change your life. You give me X amount of hours. As long as you keep opening up, I'll give you all your money back.
Right.
And no one's ever taken me up on it. We've written the contract, but nobody's ever asked for their money back. But the point is, yeah, no, I don't have total success all the time. And I'd like to say, there's just some people you don't connect with, because ultimately, as in your business, as in corporate America, as in sales, as in anything, that the relationship boils down to trust and respect. You have to respect that this person has the capacity to take you where you want to go. You have to be able to trust them, not just with your story, but trust really that they are a vessel large enough to contain your problems. So, but yeah, I don't connect with everyone, but it depends on that trust and that respect, and also their willingness to open. And it's just scary shit.
And from a personal perspective, how does it make you feel if you can't fix everyone's problems and help them and inspire them to give a shit about themselves? How do you process that? Because I personally run into that constantly.
One of the benefits of being in sports and also being in theater and, music growing up, but especially the sports side, is nobody wins every game. You win some, you learn some. And every loss is there for my betterment, is there for my learning, whether on the front side, telling them what to expect and that I may not be a fit and here's what you need to expect. And if you're not willing to do that, or whether when we're in it or whatever, but in all honesty, it's like losing the sale, it's like losing the game, it's like blowing it in your performance. You have to have mechanisms. I have to have mechanisms for getting my frustration out of me, for getting my sense of disappointment or my sense of rejection or whatever. I have to get that out of me. If you're thinking about your decisions while you're making the decisions in a business setting, yes, you're thinking. But if you're thinking about, am I making the right one? What do they think of me? Gee, maybe he doesn't think, you're gonna screw up. That self-consciousness, while you're in the middle of doing what you're supposed to be really good at, you're gonna screw up. And so for me, yeah, I use journaling, I use different meditation techniques, very simple ones that I've found over the years or created over the years, and I get it out of me.
We see people that maybe try to cope in different ways, right? Either through drugs and alcohol or exercise and eating, or even seeing a therapist, a coach, or a spiritual advisor, whatever the case is. But touching on those last three, if people haven't had success in the past, right? I grew up Catholic and 40 of my closest college friends are now deconstructing Catholicism on a daily basis. And it's like all of us women that are kind of going through this right now. And I know that you, from just what you shared, have kind of gone through a similar deconstruction or relearning, what life should look like. What would you say to someone who has tried that in the past and now is kind of like phobic to it?
Phobic to what specifically, Katrina?
To these entities, right, that are supposed to fix you and heal you or supposed to guide you. Because to your first point about our beliefs that we have since childhood or whatever the case is, if the church taught me something and now I've internalized it and I feel less than, or I'm making decisions in my life today based on something I learned when I was 5 years old, I might be skeptical to try and hear something again from a similar place or something that sounds and looks the same.
And that's totally understandable. I mean, it's akin to, dating two women, they both break my heart. After I've opened up, why the hell would I want to open up my heart a third time? I'm just going to get hurt. Even though the woman standing in front of me is a completely different woman who I'm judging based on Susie and Karen versus on, Judy, So it makes total sense. My first response is do it yourself. And that's actually precisely why I wrote my last book. It's all of my counseling method collapsed into one book, or the DIY videos on my website. And I'm not saying that as a pitch, except I'm saying I had to do it myself. But here's the thing, it took me at least 12 to 15 years to really get over it. I was suicidal for probably 10 years. No lie, I have the scars up my arms, committed suicide, the whole thing. And I was in that state for 10 years, so it was really freaking hard. And I had to do it myself and figure it out myself. And I read all the self-help books and I did all my own journaling and I was constantly prowling for new techniques and I tried them. So anytime in my books or in my work, I'm recommending something because I've tried it and it works and it's worked on my clients as well. But that's back to your question. One, do it yourself. And you can, it's just slower generally, unless you have really great tools. And I like to believe I've created really great tools based on my experience and my clients' experiences to help people and accelerate that process. First answer is this, do it on your own and get the good tools. And well, where are they? They're out there. There are some, and not just my stuff. I used other people's stuff till I created my own stuff. So there's great stuff out there. The simple answer is, how bad do you want it? How bad has your pain gotten? And when your pain is bad enough and you really are hungry for change, when you're really hungry for new life, you keep trying. And that same doggedness that you have in trying to get, a sale in your work or build your business, there are people that I've had the great pleasure to work with or just encounter who are so hungry for change. It's like, Sven, I'm going to find a way. I'm going to find a better therapist. And if I don't connect with this one and connect early, abort. Ultimately, it boils down to this. How bad is your pain and how badly do you want it? How badly are you hungry for change? Forgive me, but get off your ass and find those resources. And my recommendation, call me a dick, but start with mine. And I've got other resources in there to help you do this. But the bottom line is you have to come alive. You can't spend the rest of your life in this state of deadness inside, in this state where you feel like life is sitting its fat ass right on your face and you can't breathe. You have to change this. You're going to regret it. You already regret the time you've wasted. You have to change your life and you have to do the work.
I'm curious if you're even able to differentiate between what our soul is in maybe a secular perspective, because I only know it in the frame of how Catholics talk about it. And I think, at least for me and some of my friends, like only knowing one perspective on something and not aligning with that perspective makes it hard to hear it, because it is that triggering, emotionally responsive, statement. So yeah, if you have another way of framing what that looks like.
Yeah, and I love your question, because I do the same thing with the word love. I generally don't use the word love a lot in my counseling or in my work with people or speaking gigs. I use what I call positive attention. Love in whatever form, whatever love language you're using is a form of positive attention. Whether it's a bouquet of flowers or listening or question asking or a hug, it's positive attention. And there's a transfer of energy. So I love what you've done. I do the same thing in my early books. My very first book was Spiritual But Not Religious. And this was long before that became a phrase. And it was the first book ever on the spiritual but not religious movement. And it was about redefining God. Because you want to talk about a loaded fucking word.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And so to answer
I don't even use the word God, like same thing. I'll say universe and things like that. That's more comfortable for me.
To your question, soul. To me, the soul is the essence of who I am. And it's down at its deepest place where when I get there, everything is quiet, and it's where my authentic voice is indistinguishable from the voice of the universe, from the voice of God, if you prefer that language. But it's where there is no longer a sense of thinking or hoping, there is a sense of knowing. And what happened, and many people can't conceive of what that even really means. That's, what kind of hokum do you speak? Because there's all these other voices inside of them. And it's not voices of religion per se. Yes, that can be a piece of it, but it very often gets back to whoever the hell raised you. And whoever those significant external power sources were that taught you about yourself, very often things that were never true to begin with. And the more we get those voices out, the more we begin to get down to the essence of who I am. And I not only believe, I know, and I've seen it day in and day out.
And I wanted to also just tell you how much I appreciate you sharing halfway through or so about your own struggle with depression and suicidal thoughts. And I know that's off script because I really didn't know that about you, but I would love if you could just share, a little bit, in the sense that with Mental Health Awareness Month and men in general not being open to share their emotions, usually if they try to commit suicide, they're successful because as a man, like, you're defined by your ability to execute, right? And to make deliverables and stuff like that. So like,
I will succeed. God damn it.
Yes. Whereas women, like, less so. And I so appreciate that you made it through to this point to be here with me right now and to be able to share that. But I think that there's so many people that don't feel in a place to even talk about what's going on in their heads. And then society, their families, their colleagues find out too late. So wherever you want to go with that, but just thank you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just be very brief that it was the confluence. I was in mostly my 20s. It was mostly all of my 20s. So it was the 90s, right? Which is probably part of why I hated the 90s. Don't like 90s music, whatever, 90s styles. But personally and professionally, I was getting my ass handed to me by the church. And, the larger Lutheran organization that does, sort of puts their imprimatur on your forehead and said, you are now a pastor, and all that. Got kicked out like 3 times for my books, but also for standing up for gay rights. I went to school in Berkeley and I was married, my wife and straight guy, but I've always been very passionate about that, even before 15 years later, the church changed its stance on
Right.
gays and ministry and so on. So those two things of my books and my stance on gay rights, then my personality. And it was just closed door after closed door after closed door, even though I still felt called. And even though this was my passion, and, my dad was passionate. My mom taught at this big seminary and was a writer, but I have 5 older siblings. None of them went into ministry. There was no expectation. In fact, if anything, my parents tried to talk me out of it. So like, Sven in ministry? Oh, sweet Jesus,
right.
No, God, no.
Of all our kids, why Sven?
Exactly. Come on, pick one of the nice ones. I was getting a lot of closed doors, really getting my ass handed to me. I was going through my first divorce, losing my second kids. My first wife's father was general counsel of the SEC, and he'd argued cases before the Supreme Court. So I got killed in the divorce. It was an excruciatingly hard time in my life. And I finally reached a point where it's like, my prayers to God were, I've done everything in my power to try to be faithful and serve and do everything and And it's just like, all the doors are closed. I don't even know what to do. And you pray that prayer enough times over the course of a few years, and eventually, I'm sitting at the foot of the Berkeley Pier, looking out at San Francisco Bay, and slit my wrist, bled for like an hour. I didn't die. I started laughing, and not like giddy laughing, like because I'm high because I have no blood in me, but like laughing. It's like, I can't even die. I mean, what the hell? And I
can't even die correctly.
For me personally, I said, I really do want to live, but in order to do that, I'm going to have to live differently. I'm going to have to make decisions differently. And in retrospect, that ended up being the most pivotal day of my life. That was really, I tell people that I did commit suicide. I didn't try it. I committed it because the old Sven died. And what it happened then subsequent to that, over time, was much more, and a much more accelerated version of all that healing. And what I realized and absolutely believe is that the harder time that I had to go through in all of that, and being at that point of suicide for 10 years, really, I had suicide on my mind at least twice a week, every week for 10 years. Sometimes it was every day, sometimes it was multiple times a day. Of course, especially towards the end. I had to go through that to get where I am today. Not just, gee, I'm stronger, hard times make us strong. Yes, of course, that's true. But hard times that are also reflected on or mined, like we mine for gold. If you mine hard situations, there's wisdom in there. And there are gifts in there. There's cascading waterfalls of insight that I now have the capacity to share with others, to take them through their hardest times. And remember how I talked earlier about that vessel, that somebody's vessel is big enough to contain me, that I can't contain every problem. There's things I can't speak to. I had a person on my show the other night, and she said, I have a child who's suffering from, disabilities, special abilities. And I said, I can't speak to that. It's not an area that I know really anything about. But having gone through those very difficult times, particularly those spiritual gripping times, the evaluation of self, the self-loathing, I don't matter who I really am, everything changed in that moment. And that's when I really began to listen to my own voice and just say, fuck it. Fuck it to all the other voices that want to run my life. And if you look at all the comments on TikTok, on all these posts that I put up, people saying, that was the pivotal moment in my life. When I stopped listening to those other voices, when the pain finally got so bad that I said, screw it, I don't even care about what might happen. I have to live life my way. And that's when life begins. And so that's sort of my little suicide story. So I don't know if that really answered your question.
Thank you for sharing it. Yes, it did. And thank you for sharing that. Because I think if we do tune out those voices and the shoulds in the world, as I call them, then we can live our lives more authentically and on our own terms. Because we're no longer subscribing to someone else telling me, and being pulled in all those different directions, having those layers of conflicting information, like what you were talking about in the beginning. If I am in conflict constantly, I can't be aligned in any capacity, right? And that's kind of what you're uncovering with your clients. As we wrap up, I wanted to ask you your favorite way to basically win Wednesday, which to me is just whatever that means to you.
I love it. For me personally, as I said it really at the very beginning, the absolute key to success, in my opinion, well, there are many, but the one one of the biggest believers in is do less and quit as often as possible. Do less. Because in all odds, you're probably trying to force your success. And when we're forcing it, we're just making shit up. And it's so hard for people who are doers to be. And to take that half a step back and to create a little bit of room for the gods or the universe to work. And when you do that, that's where the fucking magic happens. So it's to do less rather than always doing more. And we see it, like I said, in athletics, people who overtrain, and then they plateau. It's always someone who's overtraining. The second thing is to quit as many things as possible. I am an absolute believer in the power of quitting, that the people who rise to the highest levels, and the highest levels, even if it's only in terms of the highest levels of being happy, not just the highest levels of making money or the highest levels of titles. It's the ones who quit as quickly as possible. When something is off, they're in tune with their own instincts, and they say, no, this isn't me. Whether they go lateral, they go up, they're not even afraid to go down if they got to do it. But this is not me. Abort. There is no value. There is no value in finishing what you start if you don't love it. If you don't love it, get the hell out, because your own voice is trying to blow this shit up. Your own voice is talking and you're not listening. And I know it's scary and you'll look like a fool and everyone's going to say, well, why are you doing that? Oh, that's dumb. And unless you can just run roughshod through those voices, unless you can just blow through it and trust your own voice, until you can trust your own voice, especially in the quitting, you'll never have the greatness that you seek. Never. Not let alone the happiness.
I love that, especially because my dad always called me a quitter growing up. So
good. Mine too.
That's great.
My older siblings too. I love it.
Wow, I love that.